who works with me specifically on immigration. If you want some extra help, but I don't know. If you've got a lawyer, I would hope that he's doing everything that needs to be done. But just as I find that lawyers don't always do everything that needs to be done, she finds that lawyers don't always need to be done in the immigration field. So anyhow, well, I believe we are live, except, well, I haven't heard anything on Speak Free Radio, so it says we're live on YouTube, but why are we not
Well, it
live?
says it says SFR at the very bottom.
Yeah, but we aren't. We didn't hear the introductory music. I was trying to avoid their junky stuff, but I usually start off with Die Meistersinger von Nürnberg.
Okay.
just just to put us in the right mood, you know. Anyhow, I will presume that we're online everywhere we're going to be, and so we're definitely live on YouTube right now. And this is Charles Lincoln from New Orleans, and I've got Bill Johnson in.
There it is.
There's what?
Oh, I heard some music, but that wasn't the SFR music.
We are live. We just didn't get, we just didn't get the music. Okay, fine. Okay, talk to you later. That was Dave.
Oh.
So anyhow, he says we're live on SFR also. So good evening, everyone from New Orleans and Los Angeles, and of course Smithville, Texas, and it is a gorgeous. It looks like it's a gorgeous day in Smithville. It's a gorgeous day in New Orleans, and we're here to continue our discussion. I don't know if Ralph's going to join us or not. I hope he will. Is Tanya going to join us?
Yeah, she's just pulled up.
Okay. Yes, Texas. Where, one of the reasons I love New Orleans is, unlike LA, unlike Texas, I can live very comfortably here without a car. Almost everything I want is in walking distance.
Well, you know that it used to be that in the early 1900s, Los Angeles had the best mass transit around.
Oh, I'm aware of that. Yes.
Yeah, and they had, I think it was called a red car, and even before they had, maybe in the 1800s, red cars were all pulled by horses, and it was on rails, and it was excellent. And then as soon as the cars came along, everybody moved to cars. But yeah, they had some great mass transit here early on.
Oh, I've seen the map of it. You could go all over L.A. County and Orange County.
Orange County too. Okay, I didn't know that.
I thought so. I thought you could get to Santa Ana and San Clemente.
Okay, could be.
Anyhow, I just remember seeing a very elaborate map, and it looked very comprehensive. And, you know, Dallas, Texas had one of those systems, and New Orleans once had a very comprehensive system, and they ripped it up in the 1960s, even though one of the most famous movies made about this town specifically got Streetcar in the title.
Oh yeah, Streetcar Named Desire.
Exactly.
Well, in Los Angeles, the streetcars, the red cars, was started by Judge Robert McLay Whitney, who was a judge here, and he also founded USC with a few other people. And the person that owned my property, and I have a large property out just outside of LA, 10 minutes, 15 minutes from downtown LA. He was a lawyer in town, and they got into a gun duel in courthouse. Judge McLay and the guy that owned my property, they were shooting each other up. And
on your property, I didn't realize that.
Well, no, he owned my property, but
okay.
It was in the courthouse in downtown LA. Over, back then you had, if you watched the old Roy Rogers movies, in the early days of the, in the when the cars just first started coming around, you had the squatters and you had the settlers, and so the squatters were the settlers, and then you had the big land barons who were buying up all the land and kicking them off. And the owner of my property was representing all of the settlers, which were also called squatters, and they didn't like each other, so they had a gun battle right in the courthouse.
That's really interesting.
I know.
Was there ever a case about that? Was there a legal case about that?
It was all over in the papers, and I have a bunch of papers on that. And I have a bunch of books that were from that man who had his collection. He was one of the most famous lawyers in L.A. And Judge Robert, he was called a judge, but he was only a judge for a little while. Then he retired and represented all the moneyed interests. What happened was you had after the Civil War, the Republicans were so mean to the Confederates that a lot of them left and they came to L.A. And right. L.A. was a very big settlement for the Confederacy. And those that wanted to become lawyers, the bar was controlled by old Confederate people. And when people come up to be part of the bar, he'd ask them what regiment they were in. If they were in like the Virginia 3rd, he says, "Oh, that's a great regiment. You don't have to take the bar exam. You're admitted." And so a lot of them were admitted. And then what happened is that there's all these land grants from the Spanish land grants. So all the wealthy Northerners, a lot of them came up here and bought up a lot of the land, and they used representatives. They couldn't buy so much land, but they used other people's names to buy them. And then they would get these Spanish land grants, and they'd kick off all of the Southerners who were settling here. And you had like Rosecrans, who was a general in the Northern Army. You have Rosecrans Boulevard, and they the Northerners were really trying to beat up on all the Southerners that came here to live here. And so the owner of my property, he represented all the Southerners, all of the squatters or the settlers, and Judge Robert McClay Whitney represented all the moneyed landowners from the North. And they had a big old fight. So they shot at each other in the courthouse.
That is a fascinating bit of history. I've never heard that before. That is just awesome.
But he's the one that also founded USC. So that pulse, what is it called? That pugilistic attitude still continued on in USC today, because there's a lot of new ones there.
Astounding. I mean, I know that one of the earliest, I was just wondering if that made it into litigation, because one of the earliest, maybe the earliest case in the United States Supreme Court on judicial immunity had to do with a duel. I think it's Bradley. Is it Bradley v. Fisher or something? But basically one of the justices of the Supreme Court was involved in a duel and found to be immune.
Okay, all right.
So anyhow, well, that's just way too interesting. And history is one of my favorite things. But I just learned something about LA history. I thought I knew LA history, but I obviously don't. So thank you, Bill. Anyhow, we are back with Cody and Tanya again. This is now a record for my podcast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 5th time in a row that I've got them on. I've never had the same guest five days in a row, but that's because what's going on here is very, very important. Very well. Instead of commenting on the news, I like to think that we are making the news, and that this is news, and so I want us to really, really develop this. And I was thinking, somebody commented to me about the importance of what I started off with last night, which was the need for isolation in order to develop a distinct ideology. And Bill, am I remembering correctly from history that Brigham Young, when he got to Utah, said, This is it. We have finally found a place where the devil can't get us.
Well, he said, "This is the place." I know that, and that's what's written on all the statues. This is the place. I don't know if he said that the devil can't get us, because boy, it sure has reached Salt Lake City. So I don't know. But yeah, I think we do want to have separation. We want to be able to be among our own people and have influence. And I think the tragedy of the Dahls shows that it just makes it more important for us to have that kind of separation from the world.
The internet is an instrument of global integration above everything else.
Yeah, that's true. But we can still, we have to deal with that. And like, I read the complaint that was drafted and filed, and there was a portion of that that I had not seen in any other sort of complaints. And it kind of goes to the issue about we need to have separation. We need to be able to have a place where our own culture, identity, religion can show through. Because in the complaint, I saw in there saying something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing it, that we have to be able to deal with these issues until the second coming of Christ, or until something like that. And you know what I'm talking about in that complaint? And I've never seen that in a court complaint.
I don't remember that at all. And I thought I knew that.
Charlie.
Huh?
Yeah, that was great.
You wrote that, Charlie.
I think you're instrument of God then.
You were relaying how we feel.
Okay. Well, so I represented your feelings correctly, because I don't remember. Okay. True confessions time. I wrote that very quickly, and so if my memory is fading, it's not just because of senility.
But it just goes to show
an all-nighter he did that in.
But it goes to show that if you take a look at some of the old court cases from the 1800s, or even old documents, it'll be signed in the year of our Lord 88 or whatever it is. And so they would make reference to that to a lot of times. But we have certainly moved back away from that. But then you guys brought it back in again, and I thought that was an interesting approach.
I grew up with the phrase Anno Domini, didn't you? I didn't think it was ancient.
Well, I only recognize it when it says in the year of our Lord. That Latin stuff kind of goes over my head.
Okay, Anno Domini was.
I taught my daughter Latin.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, she loved it. I still have all of her homeschooling books. She loved the Latin, and she loved big words. She liked words. I've even sent Charlie some of her writings where she would write words, and she loved the Latin, and she liked languages. She liked music because it was a language, and she was very interested in the languages.
Oh, that's good. When our parents were, maybe our grandparents were in school, they studied Latin. And one time I was just interested in, and something came up about Cicero, and I was interested in reading some of his orations because he's a famous orator. And my mom had a book of Cicero orations, so I thought, I'll pull it down. I pulled it down, and I opened up; it was all written in Latin, so I couldn't follow it. But yeah, it was not unusual a couple of generations ago to have that as part of the school curriculum.
That was part of her curriculum, was learning Latin, because we felt it was significant for her to learn, because that's how you learn law. That's how you learn the medical system. There's many things that use the Latin. And it's actually, one of the things that we would tell Abigail is, once you learn Latin, you can figure out any word, like the word aqua, aquamarine or aquatics or anything, with these specific Latin words like Moors, referring to death or things like that. It's the foundation of our language that I think has been purposely removed from us. One of the things that we did teach Abigail was that it was important to have a well-rounded education, to be able to be educated in all areas, to know both sides. Like I remember us, teaching her about going to the moon, but we also taught her about the conspiracies of it, why some people believe that we haven't gone to the moon, and that it's important that you know both sides and you come to your own conclusion of that. The same way with evolution. We taught her why we believe in creation and why people believe in evolution. Because that's how you teach a child to have critical thought process and to be able to debate.
Small technical thing. Tanya, Bill, do you think Tanya's a little bit loud here?
No, not for my senior citizen ears.
All right. Okay, fine. Don't worry about it then.
I
I noticed that Cody was raising his eyebrows several times, and I'd like to hear what thoughts were behind those raised eyebrows.
Well, I was actually agreeing with Tanya, and I wanted to add that I liked how concise Latin is. And, in Canada, we had to learn French. That's the other official language of Canada. And, oh my goodness, I thought it takes so much longer to say something in French than it does in English. What a tedious language. And then when we're studying the Latin, I noticed, wow, Latin is like almost half the length of an English paragraph.
Very simple.
I recently wanted to look up the difference between a rainbow trout and a Darley Varden trout. And so I went online to look it up. And you had the Latin name for both of them, and they were half a mile long. And so I don't know that it's always shorter. Sometimes it's a lot longer. Just this guy,
Well, I mean, scientific names have typically 3 parts, so that's part of that too.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that, but I sure know that.
Yeah,
I couldn't pronounce it.
Well, and the other interesting thing too is because I've been researching animals and half breeds and things like that. And when they have these names for animals, they'll include their origin, the family, the subfamily, and especially if they are bred with other animal, then the name gets even longer. But yeah, the Latin is so significant to understand. I started really getting into Latin just by studying the Bible, studying the Hebrew and the Greek with the Bible, and that really got me interested in it. And then I felt like, well, this is something my daughter really needs to know, is the Latin language, because it's significant. And it was part of her curriculum. I tried to change things up a little bit, and we decided to do this classical education for her, which included a very strong portion of Latin. And that's how we started getting into the Latin. And I mean, she was in 6th grade and she was already in algebra. Like, she loved math. And I mean, I only have a high school diploma. I have no education of any kind other than just being self-taught myself and figuring out how, when I decided to take on this journey of homeschooling my daughter, I just started learning along with her and said, I'm capable of learning with her. And I learned sign language and taught her that. And then, I read books on how to teach my daughter how to read. And then I started, teaching her how to read and then write. And that's the amazing thing about homeschooling, is you're getting an education right along with them.
Well, when my kids were growing up, I first wanted to start them reading and writing. So I bought the McGuffey's readers. I don't know if you guys know what they are, but I bought these McGuffey's readers. And see, we were married for quite a few years and couldn't have kids. And then finally we had 3 kids right in a row. And, they're like Irish twins, Irish triplets, really. And so, and the oldest was a daughter. And I started giving her McGuffey's readers. And she just picked it up just as very quickly. And then I started teaching the boys, and I think it's really easy to teach the boys. And the boys would look around; they wouldn't care, and so it wore me out. So I think that teaching a daughter at an early age is probably easier than teaching sons, because I soon gave up. And the kids that followed after the 2 boys, they didn't get anywhere near the attention because I was so worn out trying to teach those boys that wouldn't learn.
Yeah, boys are a little bit tougher. I actually grew up with 5 brothers, and I actually taught my brother how to read. I was like 10 and he was 5 because I was 5 years older than him, and I have a brother I'm 10 years older. But I remember teaching him how to read when I was just a kid myself, because I always loved school and I loved education. And so I really enjoyed, I remember in the summers, I used to make my brothers dress up in my dresses and make them be my students. I was the teacher, they were my students.
Uh-huh. Well, did you ever use the McGuffey's readers when you for your
Yeah,
daughter?
well, no, but I actually had them when I was in school. No, I ended up using some different programs. One of them was Osborne, and the other one was a program called School Zone. And I did a combination. And the thing that I think was actually the most effective was a DVD program called Leapfrog, and it teaches you phonics. And I just did a combination of that. I played videos and she would sing the songs on the phonics. And then we read, we were voracious readers. My daughter loved for us to read to her. And I have pictures of her being on my lap at 6 months old, holding books, reading to her. And then I think by the time she was 2 or 3, we started reading the Bible to her. And we would read the Bible. We started with the children's Bible, and we would read it all the way through, and then we would read other books. And I'm not kidding, probably every night before bed, we would start bedtime at 6:30 and read for an hour. She loved it. We would read an hour every single night and then put her to bed at, 7:30, 8. And we did that actually her whole life. In fact, the night before she died, she curled up with me in bed, put her head on my shoulder, and we read the Bible together. We did that every night before bed. We always read the Bible together. And it was, I mean, in some ways, it was like she was very normal and our life was normal. And then you had these occasional outbursts, and then she took her life. So
I guess that's a fairly good intro back into the topic. Now, Cody, you wanted to say something, but let me just ask a question. I was thinking after our discussion last night, do you think, have you talked to anybody about the internet as an addiction? Because when you talk about occasional outbursts, it sounds very much like the behavior of a person who has become addicted to a substance. And in this case, it was not a substance; it was a habit. But of course, substance use is a habit too. And have you thought about that? And then, Cody, I know you were trying to speak.
No, I mean, I haven't. I mean, we're not really like an addictive family because, we're very health conscious in what we eat. We don't eat out. We only eat food that I make from scratch. We don't eat sugar. So, and the diet that we had, it would be hard for it to be addicting. And then my husband and I, we don't drink, we don't smoke. We, we don't have television. We have internet at the house, but we would turn that off at night before we went to bed, sometimes even earlier. So, I mean, I don't think she's really aware of addictive behavior, but I can see how she would be addicted to something like the internet. I think she was probably on it more than I even realize or know. I think we'll probably have some idea if we're able to get this disclosure from Google and from these other apps. I mean, it'll probably tell us how often she was on the internet. We don't know.
Anyhow, Cody, you had something that I want Bill to start talking about his other reactions to the complaint, but okay. Cody.
Well, that's a great question, Charlie. I grew up with alcohol in our family, and it and smoking. I started smoking in high school secretly. And but yeah, you're right. There is some connection there between these outbursts and addiction. And when I think about it, everything, there is a pretty good alignment there. And early on, I just wanted to add the story about when we were reading to Abigail the Bible at night. She just perked up at the story of the Good Samaritan. And we had to read that over and over and over. And she kept asking questions. And after that, she found a first aid manual with, some pictures of people getting bandages and so on. And she was so interested in helping people.
Oh yeah, she was very. She really got into it. She was about 3, and we read The Good Samaritan to her, and she really connected to that story. She wanted us to read it over and over and over and over. She wanted, I think when she was 6 or 7, she wanted my mom to buy her a first aid kit. She wanted her own first aid kit and a first aid kit for cats. And then we were at a Bible camp one year, and it had a first aid manual. And it was a very boring manual, but it was
a big manual.
It was big, and she had my husband read that to her 2 times in its entirety, and then he got tired of it, and then she wanted me to read it to her, and she would be like obsessed. Like if we got onto an airplane, she's reading the entire manual.
Oh yeah, the
safety manual, and she loved like manuals, and she would actually write out manuals. Like she was just very nerdy like that with and whenever we went anywhere or did anything, if we were going on a trip, she was putting the first aid kit together. We never hardly ever needed one, but she was on top of it. She was ready with that first aid kit, and she would even write out a detailed list of everything. She was very organized like that. Whenever we went on a trip, she'd write a to-do list and, all this stuff. It was really cute.
Okay, let's hear Bill's questions.
Well, I guess Charles wanted me to comment more on the complaint.
Yes, I would.
One thing that struck me, and I thought it was very cruel, that apparently the parents of your daughter's best friend blamed you for the suicide. How did that come
out? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I really suspect that the girl, Lele, older than Abigail, knows more than she's telling us. And that's the family that called CPS on us when we were in the hospital with Abigail and said that we were bad parents.
Yeah. She wasn't the only one. I had another friend too. I had 2 friends, my friend Christina and my friend Rachel. Both of them were instrumental in the hospital with Abigail, and they both became friends and collaborated against me. And they were the ones that were able to break into the phones, and they looked at everything in the phones before we could even look at anything. And by the time we got to the phones, they got blocked out because they had one of the phones. They were against us. They blamed me and Cody for Abigail's death. There is an incident where Abigail was really acting irrational, and Cody got upset with her and hit her. He hit her in the arm, and she had mentioned that to one of her friends, and they thought that Cody was abusive. And I said, no, Cody's actually never really ever laid a hand on her. We never really spanked her. Like we didn't discipline her, by spankings or things like that. We actually really didn't have to discipline her too much. She was really a good child. And I said, he did have an outburst and he did hit her in the arm. He didn't hit her hard. He was trying to get her attention. And they felt like, by reading that chat and what she said, that he was an abusive man. And they took that and said that, we drove Abigail to her death. And I said, you know, like, people make mistakes, you know, with parenting. Nobody's perfect. You know, we all do things that we regret, but we were devoted, dedicated parents that we weren't understanding what was going on with Abigail, because in our mind we're like, she's not on the internet. We even monitor what books that she gets. Like, I don't read the books, but I go online. There's a website called Common Sense Media, and I research and get, you know, a synopsis of these books and what parents think about it. And before I say, yes, you can read that book, or no, you can't. I wouldn't let her read things like Harry Potter or, you know, a lot of these trilogy books, things like that. I absolutely said no to those things. So yes, our friends, they got into the phones before we did. They read everything, and then they handed the phone over to us and said, here you go. In fact, her best friend called one of the people, one of the girls that was friends with Abigail, that Abigail's never met, and talked to her. We don't know the whole story. All we know is they called CPS on us. CPS came to the hospital, investigated us. And then after she died, they said we were horrible parents, and they abandoned us. And we haven't talked to them since. I did talk to a lady. I talked to a therapist, I don't know, maybe a year after Abigail's death, a lady in Canada, just for 2 or 3 sessions. And she said, many times people will abandon you in a situation like suicide because they don't know how to handle. They don't know how to handle a death like that. And so I thought that was helpful advice for me, and I just accepted that as why they abandoned us.
The other complaint to CPS was that
I didn't realize there were two. There were two complaints.
well, sort of. There was things that they complained to CPS about us, and another one, aside from me punching Abigail on the arm one time, which was about the same time that she had called Tanya a homophobe. I just remember her saying something that was so appalling that I ended up punching her on the arm, like, stop. That is, like, I think she was talking to Tanya, and she just said something that was like so rude that I punched her on the arm. Like, it just, like a reflex or something. Anyways, the other complaint, which has allowed us to figure out who made the complaint to CPS, because they weren't telling us who made the complaint, was that there was a green frog birthday cake at Laylee's birthday party, which was what, coming up or something?
How can there be a green birthday cake when?
No, her birthday was coming up, and they were talking about it, and it was going to be a green frog, or there was a green frog birthday cake at her party. I don't know when Laylee's birthday is.
She wanted a green frog. She wanted a birthday cake with green frogs.
Yeah. Anyways, you know, we've often, you know, had to deal with this sort of thing, and Abigail knows that she doesn't get to eat every treat at the birthday party that other kids eat, and she's happy because we make her own special treat, and enough of them that if other kids want to try her treats, then that's fine.
Well, Cody, you can't say that. I mean, she was getting at an age where it was affecting her, and when she was little, it wasn't. But yes, the one thing that was, I mean, we started seeing things that Abigail was being bothered by, which was they complained that we wouldn't allow Abigail to eat, you know, birthday cakes. Well, we don't eat sugar. We don't eat wheat. You know, we don't, you know, create, you know, things like frogs and put them on cakes. We feel like that's idolatry. And we try to explain these things to Abigail. And Rachel really thought that we were just horrible parents, that we wouldn't let our daughter participate in that type of activity. And I said, look, I'm not opposed to making my daughter a cake, you know, but I'm going to make it with honey. I'm going to use spelt, and I'm going to make something that is more appropriate. My daughter's not starved for treats.
Yeah, quite often she'd go to a birthday party with like like about a dozen homemade cupcakes of some healthy treat that she can eat one or two or whatever, and also share some with her friends if they wanted to try her cake instead of the store-bought and artificial icing color birthday cake.
Yeah, and so we would talk to Abigail, about dyes and things like that, and she was fine, but in some ways I felt like her friend was really influencing her, which we didn't like. And so we kind of felt like there was a real struggle here with with being friends with people that had some Christian values like we had, and homeschooled and things like that. But I mean, we're kind of unique, I guess, than other people in the fact that no, we just don't eat these kind of things. And the reason why we don't is because we're educated in those areas. And it was hard navigating those things and trying to be compassionate to these people, and understanding where they come from, but also trying to maintain our morals and values, and trying to explain to Abigail, like, if we give in to all of these things all the time, then it becomes a part of our life, and then we're not separated from those things. And so it's hard. It was hard being a parent navigating these stuff with Abigail. And I think the internet exasperated that for her.
But also that particular aspect of movement has become much more popular now. A lot of young parents, they're concerned about all this autism that takes place among the younger kids. And so they're careful about not eating these artificial foods, not being vaccinated and things like that. So you were at the beginning of a very strong and powerful movement among younger parents.
Absolutely. And she's been invited. She got invited to a birthday party. And I said, well, do you mind if I just bring our own cakes? Because Abigail, she goes, oh, everything's gluten-free and this and this. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even believe it. I'm like, I was so happy. And I shared that with Abigail. I said, look, there are people that are like us that understand that we should be eating this way. So yeah, it was hard navigating those things. And those are just a few of the things that they just piled on why we were bad parents.
I got it. Okay, to move on, I noticed another issue in the complaint that in California, I believe that when you file these complaints for money damages, you put not an amount, but you put an amount. You don't put a dollar figure, you say an amount as proved at trial or something like that. But I looked in your complaint, and I think it was like $52 million that you were requesting. Charles, is that correct? How did you come up with that figure?
That was just what they suggested.
Who's they?
Those two ladies, gentleman and lady there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Tanya. Okay.
All right. Do you know if that's a normal amount for this type of claims in Texas, or?
No, it's definitely not. Basically the old rule in Texas a long time, well, like 20, 30 years ago, was that you shouldn't plead the amount of damages at all, like what you're saying in California. But they've changed that rule in Texas, where you can state an amount, but they still have the rule that pleading an amount of damages is not subject to objection to as frivolous.
Oh, I see. But I think I read some sort of recent court case somewhere where the judgment for a family was $200 million. And this was, I think, against a hospital that the mother eventually committed suicide, and they kind of kept the daughter. It was like she had some sort of rare disease, and the hospital thought that it was Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And so they kept the family away from this girl, and it was just a horrible situation. And so recently, this is within, I think, this month, that the jury awarded $200 million to the family for what they did to this girl. And she was still alive. It was the mother that committed suicide. So maybe you really went too low. You lowballed it when you asked $50
Well,
million dollars.
Basically in either Texas or federal, wherever this ends up, what you say in a complaint rarely has any relationship to.
I know. Yeah.
Really.
Well, thanks, Bill. I feel good about that. I mean, I actually prayed about it, and in my mind, I thought 52 million was too high.
Like it seems
Like
to us,
it's like an insane amount of money. But I prayed about it, and I need to plug this in. And God just gave that number to me. And then Charlie threw in, that range, and I'm like, you know what, God, I'm just going to let this be in your hands, and you're going to make the decision on it. But I mean, here's the fact, Bill. There's no amount of money that can give me relief with my dog.
Of course. Yeah.
The only thing that this money does is hopefully it puts some dent in these companies. And if there's enough dents, they might do something.
Well, it also draws attention to the seriousness of the complaint. And so their lawyers will take it seriously and try to beat you up that much more, unfortunately, in court.
Yeah. Well,
I know.
I was just thinking along the lines that, there was a settlement or something, for 37 million for, I think it was the family of George Floyd or something like this. And anyways, I thought in that context, it seemed, I guess that's what's going on, and this was not unreasonable. We've got a legitimate complaint here. And also, I just heard recently there was a Starbucks employee fired wrongfully and collected $25 million.
She was white.
Because
for racism.
I read that.
Yeah. So, well, who knows, Bill? Maybe we'll get at least 50 million from each company.
I don't know.
And then that would be 200 million.
Let me just remind you that you have not sued any of these companies for monetary damages at all, because you have no basis whatsoever for any factual allegations of actual wrongdoing, except the refusal to give you the disclosure voluntarily. That's all we can say with certainty about Google. They refused to give you this information, and they made a very lame excuse, or basically no excuse at all. They just said, we ain't going to do it. And you are not suing any of these companies for damages at the moment, and you can't unless you get some evidence. But
the roadblocks that these social media companies put up, and I mean, it's not just social media companies, banks and every institution put up these roadblocks that you cannot get information. And whether it comes because of the various confidentiality and privacy laws from the state and federal government, or just internal policies of the various corporations, it's very hard to get any sort of information. And it's just so counterproductive for society. I mean, when I was a kid, you walked into a bank and you say, I want to open up an account. You write your name on a slip of paper, Billy Johnson, age 9. And you give them that, and they open up the bank account for you, and that's it. Now it's everything. You can't get any information from any institution without pulling teeth. And it's very expensive. I have to do this a lot in my practice, and that needs to be addressed, particularly when the person has died. It should, this barrier that they put up to protect the privacy should be done away with. So maybe these type of lawsuits will change the way these companies deal.
Well, I believe that they don't want to give information because they're hiding information. Because I provided all the information to them, which her death certificate, I said she was 12, she was underage. We believe, and I even stated, I believe that there's information that would lead to her death. And I believe they looked at the information and they chose not to provide anything because I think that they're hiding something. I really do. I know they're hiding something. Just from a mother's gut intuition, I know that they're hiding something. Why they denied the information.
I think last night I commented to you that anything you say can and will be held against you. And if Google is listening, if anybody from Google is listening to this right now, you've just given them an extra incentive to fight a little bit harder than they normally would.
Yeah.
We drafted this complaint so that basically they wouldn't feel that it was a complaint against them. I know that that's a tall order because we're asking a court to order one of the largest corporations in the world to do something that they said they weren't going to do.
Yeah.
You know,
but also, Lincoln, I think it's highly improbable that they're listening to this. So I don't know.
They will, if they aren't listening today, they will eventually.
Yes.
If they want, I mean, that much I know about billable hours. They will assign a junior associate to track down every statement, including all of Tanya's ads from Canada for health food. They will find every recorded word she has ever spoken.
Well, then, hello, Google. How you doing there?
Well, now they've got their AI that does most of that legwork automatically.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is I stopped using Google years ago. You know, I started using a Linux program, and I started phasing out all of that stuff. And I stopped using the Google search engine and Google Gmail, all of that stuff. I stopped using all of those things.
We're on Google right now.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, is your talk radio on Google?
And
no,
YouTube.
YouTube is.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you're the one that's posting all of that. I wouldn't personally post
it.
all of it.
It actually goes live over his platform to YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, well, they may find it. I've tried to Google myself, and there's not a lot of information that comes up. And because I've lived in both countries and I have two names in different countries, it may be, you know, they may have more work to do because I have a different name in the US than I do in Canada.
Okay. All right.
Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Yeah.
Well, from what I understand, they can't use this information on videos.
They can use anything that you've said as an admission. Anything
Well,
that
and you just stated to me that people, I mean, if somebody was committing a crime on TV and somebody was filming it, they cannot use that as evidence.
Okay, we're going to have a little discussion about hearsay because you're still not understanding it. Anything,
I guess so.
Because yes, anything that is a film of you can be used against you. Anything.
Okay, that's when I stated I watched a documentary on Epic Times with a person that used to work for Google and Facebook, and they gave all this information about algorithms. And you said that's hearsay; it cannot be used as evidence. And I'm like,
correct.
Okay,
yes, because that's about algorithms. It's about a highly technical subject. Bill, do you want to take over a discussion on hearsay rules right now?
Well, I heard that Google told me, I heard that Google said that they're going to fight this because they have evidence that will really convict them of a crime. They told me that, or I heard that, or whatever like that. So, if the Dahls want to say, well, Johnson said that Google is hiding stuff, that's hearsay, and you can't use it. So.
Well, actually, I mean I'd call that a little bit problematic because Google is a party. And if Google actually told you that, or if a lawyer for Google actually told you that,
that's why I said I heard that Google had said that. That's why I mean, correct myself. Yeah.
But if an officer of Google actually said that to you, that would be an admission of a party opponent, just like what Tanya is doing right now.
Yeah. That's correct.
Okay, I'm learning. So help me here, Bill.
Okay.
I got to represent myself.
All right. I don't litigate. If you want me to draft a contract in Japanese, I can do that. But I'm international corporate law. I don't go
Konnichiwa?
to litigate. I don't
Konnichiwa
litigate.
desu
What? So you,
ka? Konnichiwa desu ka?
I'm sorry, what? Oh, I see. Yeah.
Konnichiwa desu ka?
Yeah.
Do you speak? Do you speak? No. Konnichiwa desu ka means what is this?
I know. You said, what is it? You said, Korewa
Yeah.
nan desu ka? And I said,
Yeah.
Korewa pin desu. I said, this is a pin.
Yeah. Do I talk to Mashite?
Okay. But in any event, the point is
I
that
did Japanese for 4 years.
oh, did you? Good for you. I don't litigate. I mean, my name appears on various litigations, but I have litigators who do the work for me. So if you ask me about the various hearsay rules or rules of court, that's going to go over my head. You guys will know more about it by the time you're through with this than I know.
Well, is there anything? I mean, we're almost out of time, but are there any? Would you like to make some final comments about the complaint? And that's one question. And do you want to follow up with on this again? Because I had also given you those other complaints, and I wanted to see if you wanted to discuss the general context of litigation in a future event.
Well, I think that I'll take a break for a while if that's okay. It's just that this whole approach that we're taking underscores what we were talking about at the very beginning of this discussion, is that we need to separate. We need to be able to have our own community where we police ourselves. And you mentioned that you homeschool your kids, and I thought that homeschooling has become very popular now. So I was hoping that homeschooling would be kind of a community within a larger dystopian society that we can rear our children properly in. But what you've told me is that some of these parents that you've dealt with are not part of the community that I envision. Now, were these parents that you kind of had problems with, were they part of the homeschooling group of people or what?
Well, okay. Well, I mean, we have two dynamics here is because we lived in Canada and I would come here in Texas for the winter. And so my daughter's best friend is from Texas and she was homeschooled and her parents are Christian, but they weren't on the same page with us. Now, I was influencing them a lot and getting them to make some changes and things like that. But most of our friends and homeschoolers were more like-minded in Canada and Saskatchewan where we lived. And so this was kind of a unique situation where we got connected with this one family. And the daughter was being influenced by social media as well. And I think that was also some of the issue that we were having, was that she was being influenced by social media, which Abigail wanted to be influenced by social media. And so I was trying to separate the two and influence the friend's mom and getting her away from some of these things. And, you know, one of the things that I did was they didn't have a home phone. And I said, I'm not going to let Abigail text. If, you know, if your daughter wants to talk to my daughter, you need to get, you know, a Magic Jack phone and she can have a phone and she can call Abigail. I mean, they didn't even have a dining room table. And I said, look, you guys need to be eating dinner at home and, you know, just influencing them. And
they didn't have a dining room table because they had gaming all over the house.
Yeah. So we kind of switched those things up. And I kind of felt like God was calling me to help these people. You know, I feel like he has me helping lots of people. And I felt like, you know, how do I help people become more of a Christian and protect my daughter at the same time, you know? And I think that she was heavily influenced by that. You know, just like PK kids are. Their kids, their dads are pastors, and then they're influenced by the world. I felt like that I had a struggle with that. I wanted to keep my daughter separate. But I want to mention one thing real quick before this ends, is I just read recently that this man went into this Amish community and brutally killed, raped this Amish girl. And we've got people that are coming into our communities wanting to harm them.
Well,
let's do that.
Bill, any last words of wisdom here?
No, we'll leave it with her comment, Mrs. Dahl's comment. Okay.
Well, thank you again. This is Charles Lincoln and Bill Johnson from
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Los Angeles and New Orleans.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.